Okay, let's unpack this. Have you ever wondered why, suddenly you need that cookie or why you feel full, but then somehow there's room for something different?
Yeah, definitely.
We all eat, obviously,
Yeah.
every single day. But the reasons why we eat and when and how much, well, it's way more complex than just your stomach growling.
Indeed. What seems like such a simple act, just eating, it's actually this really intricate dance. You've got biological signals, brain chemistry, even your surroundings play a part.
Right.
And we tend to blame willpower, oh, I ate too much, or I don't have the willpower to resist. But the science really tells a different story, a much deeper one.
So today we're doing a deep dive. We're getting into the weeds of motivation, our internal states, specifically hunger, feeling full, satiety, and the disorders that pop up when these systems go wrong.
Exactly.
We'll touch on everything from like your body's basic thermostat to, get this, gut bacteria and genes shaping what's on your plate.
Our goal here is really to understand why we eat, how our bodies decide, okay, start now, or all right, time to stop. And what happens when those finely tuned systems get disrupted.
Yeah.
And you'll find out that what motivates us to eat is, well, it's powerful, it's multifaceted, and sometimes the consequences are just tragic.
Like Christopher's story.
Exactly. Christopher, this young man with Prader-Willi syndrome, his brain just couldn't get the I'm full signal. He literally ate himself to death. It's heartbreaking, but it really highlights how deep these biological drives run.
Wow. Okay, so before we tackle hunger itself, maybe let's lay some groundwork. Talk about motivation basics.
Good idea.
At its core, motivation just means to set in motion, right? The things that start and direct what we do. And a huge concept here is homeostasis.
Right. Think of homeostasis like the thermostat in your house. You set the temperature you want. That's your set point.
Right.
If it gets too cold, furnace kicks on.
Yeah.
Too hot, AC starts up. Our bodies have really similar control systems working constantly behind the scenes just to keep things stable for survival.
Like body temperature. That's a classic example.
Yeah.
You've got your ectotherms, snakes, lizards. They need the sun to warm up. And then there's us, endotherms. We shiver if we're cold, sweat if we're hot. We make our own heat. And that internal thermostat, it's in the preoptic area of the hypothalamus. Tiny area, huge job, incredibly precise.
And thirst is another great example. Our bodies are, 70% water?
Yeah.
And we're always losing it. Breathing, sweating.
Yeah.
Even just the way your nose is designed actually helps recapture some moisture when you breathe out. The body really tries to conserve.
Okay, but here's where it gets really interesting with thirst. There isn't just one kind of thirst.
Right.
There's osmotic thirst. That's when the fluid inside your cells gets low, like after you've eaten a really salty meal, maybe.
Exactly. Water gets pulled out of the cells to balance the salt outside. And then there's hypovolemic thirst. That's different. That's when your overall blood volume drops, say after heavy exercise or donating blood. And what's fascinating is how the brain keeps tabs on both. You've got these specialized detectors like the OVLT, the organum vasculosum lamina terminalis.
Catchy name.
Yeah. It basically senses when your cells are shrinking. And then you have pressure receptors, baroreceptors, monitoring blood volume. But the really cool part, you stop feeling thirsty way before that water actually gets down to your cells and fixes the problem.
How does that work?
Well, there's another brain area, the subfornical organ, SFO, that kind of anticipates the rehydration. Activity in the neurons that make you feel thirsty can drop off with just the first lick of water, especially if it's cool water. It's like the brain saying, okay, help is on the way, don't overdo it, prevents you from drinking too much.
Okay, so those drives, temperature, thirst, they seem relatively, maybe simple isn't the right word, but direct, a response to a specific lack.
Yeah, a deficit model, pretty much.
But hunger. Oh, hunger, that's a whole different ballgame, isn't it?
Completely different. Hunger is way more complicated because it's not just about fixing one deficiency. We need all sorts of different nutrients.
Right. Sugars, fats, proteins.
Exactly. And our body's energy set point, unlike temperature, can shift dramatically and for long periods, which is, what we see happening in conditions like obesity.
And taste must play a huge role in that complexity. I mean, as omnivores, we have to figure out what's good to eat, what's maybe not nutritious, and what could actually be poisonous.
Absolutely critical. Our 5 main taste sensations, sour, sweet, bitter, salty, and that savory umami taste.
Ah, yes, umami.
They're basically an evolutionary survival guide. Sweet means energy, calories. Salty means essential minerals. Umami signals protein. Those are generally go signals.
Okay.
But sour and bitter, often those were warnings, spoilage, potential toxins, like a caution or stop signal. These tastes are working quietly in the background all the time.
And get this. Have you ever noticed how, like, the first bite of cake is amazing, the second is good, but the third, not quite the same?
Sensory-specific satiety.
That's it.
Yeah, it's your brain's clever trick to get you to eat a variety of foods. If everything kept tasting amazing, you might just eat one thing. This encourages dietary diversity, which helps you get balanced nutrition.
It makes sense. I read about this researcher, Clara Davis, back in the 1920s. She let infants choose their own foods from a wide variety.
Oh yeah, the self-selection studies.
And over time, they naturally picked a balanced diet. They'd switch it up.
It's pretty remarkable. And it also explains things like learned taste aversion.
Yeah.
You eat something, you get sick later, even if it wasn't the food's fault.
You avoid it like the plague after that.
Exactly, like rats learning to avoid poison bait. Or sometimes cancer patients develop aversions to foods they ate before chemotherapy. And the flip side is learned taste preference. We learn to like flavors that are paired with calories or nutrients.
But this wisdom of the body, as it's sometimes called, it definitely has its limits in the modern world.
Oh, absolutely. You give even rats access to, chocolate chip cookies, potato chips, that kind of stuff.
Good stuff.
The really palatable stuff. Even they struggle. They often become obese. That powerful allure of taste, especially combinations of fat and sugar, can just override our internal nutritional compass.
So beyond taste, how does the body actually manage the food energy coming in? I know there are different phases.
Right. After you eat, you enter the absorptive phase. Your body's using the glucose from the meal for immediate energy. And the hormone insulin is key here. It helps your cells take up that glucose. Any excess gets stored.
Stored as what?
As glycogen, mostly in the liver and muscles. That's like short-term energy storage. And also as fat for longer-term storage.
Okay, so that's when food is coming in. What about when you haven't eaten for a while?
Then you shift into the fasting phase. Your blood glucose levels start to drop. Now the body needs to tap into those stores. Another hormone, glucagon, tells the liver to break down that stored glycogen back into glucose.
Fuel for the brain.
Primarily, yeah. And fat gets broken down into fatty acids for the rest of the body. If things get really dire, like prolonged starvation, the body will even start breaking down muscle protein for energy. It's a cascade.
And the hypothalamus is conducting this whole orchestra.
Largely, yes. Particularly the lateral hypothalamus and the paraventricular nucleus, or PVN, they're critical hubs for integrating hunger signals and controlling metabolism.
So what actually starts a meal? We think empty stomach, but you mentioned it's more than that. People without stomach still feel hungry, right?
Exactly. An empty stomach contributes, but it's not the main driver. We have these internal fuel detectors. One is for glucose. Low glucose triggers glucoprivic hunger.
Glucoprivic, got it.
Another is for fatty acids. Low levels trigger lipoprivic hunger. Your liver detects both of these dips and sends signals up to the brain, mainly via the vagus nerve.
Okay, so low sugar, low fat signals.
What else? Then there's ghrelin. This is a big one. It's a hormone made mostly in the stomach, and its levels shoot up right before you typically eat. It's a powerful eat now signal.
And Christopher, the young man with Prader-Willi.
His ghrelin levels were astronomically high, like 2.5 to 4.5 times higher than normal consistently. That constant overwhelming ghrelin signal was a major factor in his insatiable hunger.
Wow. And these signals, the low fuel, the ghrelin, they activate specific neurons.
Yes, they converge on a key spot in the arcuate nucleus of the hypothalamus. They activate what are called NPY-AGRP neurons. Think of these as the master on switch for eating.
So they make you hungry.
They make you hungry, they promote eating, and they slow down your metabolism to conserve energy. And get this, during severe starvation, they even suppress other drives, like sexual motivation. The body basically says food is priority number one right now, everything else can wait.
Makes sense from a survival perspective.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's starting the meal. What about stopping, feeling full, satiety? Stomach stretching plays a role, obviously.
It does. Stomach dissension sends signals up the vagus nerve, but just feeling physically full isn't enough for long-term satiety. You can fill your stomach with water, but you'll be hungry again pretty soon. True satiety, feeling satisfied after a meal, requires more. Your intestines play a huge role. As food moves into the intestines, they release various peptides like cholecystokin or CCK.
CCK.
CCK is particularly sensitive to fats. It signals the brain, essentially saying, okay, nutrients are arriving, particularly fats. But here's the thing about CCK. It mainly helps you end a single meal. It limits meal size. It doesn't necessarily stop you from feeling hungry again an hour later.
So it's a short-term signal,
Mm,
which brings us back to the bigger picture.
yeah.
How does the body regulate weight over the long term? Weeks, months, years.
That's where other hormones really come into play. A major one is leptin.
Leptin, heard of that one, comes from fat cells.
Exactly. Leptin is secreted by your adipose tissue, your fat cells, in proportion to how much fat you have stored. So more fat means more leptin. It circulates in the blood, reaches the brain, and basically tells it about your long-term energy reserves.
Like a fuel gauge for fat stores.
Precisely. It acts as a brake on eating. High leptin generally suppresses appetite. This was shown really dramatically in those old parabiotic experiments.
Right, where they surgically joined the circulatory systems of 2 rats.
Yeah. They joined an obese rat, one that couldn't respond to leptin, to a normal lean rat. The obese rat's blood, full of leptin, flowed into the lean rat.
And what happened?
The lean rat basically starved itself. Its brain got this overwhelming signal, we have massive fat stores, even though it didn't, and it stopped eating. Meanwhile, the obese rat kept eating because its brain couldn't get the leptin signal.
That's wild. And those OBOB and DBDB mice helped figure this out too.
Yes, the OBOB mice lacked the gene to make leptin entirely. The DBDB mice made leptin but lacked the brain receptor for it. Studying them was crucial for identifying leptin and understanding its role.
And insulin plays a part in long-term regulation too.
It does. Insulin levels also tend to correlate with body fat, although not as directly as leptin. It also acts in the brain to help regulate food intake and body weight. And then there's orexin, sometimes called hypocretin.
Orexin.
Yeah, it's kind of a hybrid signal. It increases appetite, especially when glucose or leptin levels are low or when ghrelin is high. It sort of integrates short-term hunger cues with longer-term energy status. Another layer of complexity.
It's just incredible how many systems are involved, which I guess also means there are many ways things can go wrong.
Unfortunately, yes.
And the rise in obesity globally is, well, it's staggering. The stats you mentioned earlier, doubling in men, tripling in women worldwide between 75 and 2014. More obese people than underweight people now.
It's a massive public health crisis. And it's not just about appearance, obviously. Obesity significantly increases the risk for so many serious conditions. Type 2 diabetes, heart disease, stroke, certain cancers, even cognitive decline, like that Swedish study showed with temporal lobe shrinkage.
Yeah.
The costs are just enormous, both for individuals' health and, for healthcare systems globally.
And it's so easy to fall into the trap of thinking it's just about willpower. Just eat less, move more.
If only it were that simple.
But the research really points towards something much more complex, right? You mentioned biochemical defects, even similarities to drug addiction.
Absolutely. Things like reduced dopamine receptors, similar to what you see in addiction, are found in some individuals with obesity. It suggests changes in the brain's reward system, and beyond diet and exercise, which are clearly important, there are these other factors, like sleep deprivation.
How does sleep fit in?
Well, average sleep time has dropped significantly, and when you don't get enough sleep, your leptin levels, the satiety hormone, go down, and your ghrelin levels, the hunger hormone, go up.
Double whammy.
Exactly.
Yeah, well.
You feel hungrier, less satisfied, and you tend to crave high-calorie, high-carb foods. It's a hormonal setup for weight gain.
Okay, and then you mentioned infections. That sounds wild.
It does, but there's evidence for it. A specific virus, human adenovirus 36.
The cold virus.
Yeah, one of them. It's found more often in individuals with obesity, and studies show it can actually increase fat storage and prevent fat breakdown in cells. And then there's a gut microbiome.
The bacteria in our gut.
Yep. Certain types of bacteria, like those belonging to the Firmicutes group, seem to be more efficient at extracting calories from food. So 2 people could eat the exact same meal, but the person with more Firmicutes might harvest more energy from it, potentially contributing to weight gain.
That's incredible. So my gut bacteria could be influencing my weight.
It seems increasingly likely they play a role. And then, of course, there's genetics.
The nature part of the equation.
Big time. Adoption studies, twin studies. They all point to a strong hereditary component. Identical twins raised apart often have remarkably similar BMIs, much more so than fraternal twins.
Wow.
We know of over 40 different gene variants linked to obesity risk now. They affect everything: appetite signals, feeling full, how your body burns calories, how it stores fat. Like the FTO gene variant having 2 copies can increase obesity risk by something like 70%.
70%.
Yeah.
But that raises the big question. How much is destiny? Are we just locked in by our genes?
Not entirely. That's where epigenetics comes in. It's fascinating. Epigenetics is about how environmental factors can actually change how your genes are expressed without changing the DNA sequence itself.
Okay. How does that relate to weight?
The Dutch hunger winter during World War II is a tragic but powerful example. Women who were pregnant during that severe famine, their children, decades later, had significantly higher rates of obesity.
Why?
It seems the severe nutritional stress during pregnancy caused epigenetic changes specifically, changes in DNA methylation in the developing fetus. These changes basically programmed the offspring's metabolism for scarcity, making them more prone to storing fat and developing obesity when food became plentiful later in life.
So what happened to the mother during pregnancy could affect the child's weight risk decades down the line.
Exactly. It shows how early life environment can have these incredibly long-lasting effects by tweaking gene expression. Your mom's diet, stress levels, it can literally shape your predisposition.
Which makes treating obesity even more challenging, I imagine.
Extremely, because the body actively fights against weight loss. When you lose weight, your basal metabolic rate, BMR, the calories you burn just existing, often drops more than expected for your new weight.
Your body tries to conserve energy?
Precisely. It defends that higher weight.
Right.
And if you've maintained a higher weight for a long time, your metabolic set point might actually readjust to that higher level, making it even harder to lose weight and keep it off.
So what works? Diets and exercise are important, but maybe not always enough.
They're foundational, absolutely, but often not sufficient on their own, especially for significant long-term weight loss. Medications have had a really rocky history, lots of side effects, remember fen-phen.
Oh, yeah.
But newer drugs are showing more promise. They target some of these pathways we've talked about, serotonin, leptin, ghrelin, trying to manage appetite or cravings.
And treating it like an addiction.
And some approaches do, yeah, focusing on the behavioral and reward aspects. But currently, the most effective treatment we have for severe obesity is actually bariatric surgery, things like gastric bypass.
Which physically limits how much you can eat.
It does that, yes, but it's much more than just plumbing. The surgery dramatically changes gut hormone levels. Ghrelin often plummets, while satiety hormones like PYY go up. It even alters the gut microbiome in beneficial ways.
So it changes the biology, not just the stomach size.
Exactly. And the health benefits often go way beyond weight loss remission of type 2 diabetes, lower blood pressure, improved cholesterol. It can be life-changing for the right patients.
And that pet connection you mentioned for prevention. Furry pets helping gut bacteria.
Yeah, isn't that interesting? Some recent studies suggest early life exposure, even in the womb via the mother, to environments with pets might promote beneficial gut microbes like Ocelospira and Ruminococcus. And these bacteria have been linked to lower risk of obesity later in childhood. It's early days, but it suggests another environmental factor influencing our microbiome and weight risk.
Wow. Okay, so we've talked a lot about obesity, which is a huge issue. But there are other eating disorders that are equally serious, though maybe affect different populations.
Absolutely. And often disproportionately affecting women, though men experience them too. Conditions like anorexia nervosa.
The starving disease.
Right, where individuals severely restrict their food intake, often have an intense fear of gaining weight and a really distorted perception of their own body. They might see themselves as overweight, even when they're dangerously thin.
And the health consequences are severe.
Devastating. Heart problems, bone density loss, organ damage. Anorexia has one of the highest mortality rates of any psychiatric disorder. It's incredibly serious. And brain imaging studies show actual physical changes like reduced brain volume and dysfunction in those circuits involved in reward, emotion, and cognitive control. It's like the brain's control systems override the natural pleasure and drive associated with eating.
And there's bulimia nervosa.
Yeah, it's different.
Right? Cycles of binging and purging.
Yes. Individuals with bulimia engage in recurrent episodes of eating very large amounts of food binging, often feeling out of control. And then they engage in compensatory behaviors to prevent weight gain, like self-induced vomiting, excessive exercise, or using laxatives.
And they might be normal weight?
Often, yes, or even slightly overweight, which can make it harder to recognize sometimes. But biologically, their bodies are often still fighting that cycle. Studies show they can have higher ghrelin levels between meals, suggesting underlying hunger and blunted responses of satiety hormones like PYY after eating.
And there's a third one, more recently recognized, binge eating disorder.
Right, BED. This involves recurrent binge-eating episodes, like in bulimia, but without the regular compensatory purging behaviors.
So just the binging.
Yes, often accompanied by feelings of intense shame, guilt, and disgust afterwards. People with BED often eat alone because of these feelings. And research is increasingly linking BED to issues with decision-making, impulse control, and altered dopamine pathways again, showing overlaps with substance use disorders.
And like obesity, these disorders aren't just about food or willpower either. It's a complex mix of factors. Social pressure is definitely one.
Undeniably. Especially the intense cultural pressure towards thinness, particularly for women. That Fiji example is so striking.
Where satellite TV arrived.
Exactly. And within just a few years, rates of dieting and self-induced vomiting soared among adolescent girls. They started reporting dissatisfaction with their bodies, wanting to be thinner, mirroring the Western ideals they were suddenly seeing on TV. It shows how powerful those cultural messages can be.
But it's not just social pressure, is it? There's biology involved here, too.
Absolutely. Genetics plays a significant role. Heritability estimates for anorexia, bulimia, and BED are quite high, often over 50%.
Wow, so a strong genetic component.
Yes. And again, epigenetics seems relevant here, too. Hormonal changes during adolescence, stress, even dieting itself, these things might trigger epigenetic modifications, perhaps affecting genes related to dopamine or other neurotransmitters, potentially increasing vulnerability in genetically susceptible individuals.
And you mentioned neurotransmitters.
Yeah.
Serotonin, dopamine, cannabinoids, they're involved too, not just in mood, but in eating itself.
They're deeply intertwined. These systems regulate mood, anxiety, reward, and appetite and eating behavior. Imbalances could contribute to the anxiety, depression, and compulsive behaviors we often see with eating disorders.
Right.
For instance, some research suggests that altered serotonin receptor function might contribute to the anxiety seen in anorexia, and that restricting food might paradoxically temporarily reduce that anxiety for some individuals, reinforcing the starvation behavior. It's a really complex neurobiological puzzle.
So stepping back from all this detail, this deep dive really shows that why we eat, how much we eat, and the problems that arise. It's incredibly complex.
It really is. It's this constant interplay between our ancient biology designed for a very different world, our individual genetic makeup, and the environment we live in now, especially our food environment.
That idea of the wisdom of the body, it seems like it can be both a lifesaver and sometimes a liability in today's world.
Well put. That drive for calories, for palatable food, was essential for survival. But now, with hyper-palatable, energy-dense food available 204/7, that same drive can become problematic. Understanding the biology, the genetics, the epigenetics, it helps us move past simplistic ideas about willpower.
Yeah, it's definitely not just about willpower. So maybe the next time you sit down to eat, think about that incredible symphony of signals happening inside. Your gut talking to your brain, hormones rising and falling, ancient drives meeting modern temptations. It's this constant negotiation, nature and nurture. And it reminds us that, while our genes play a role, heredity isn't necessarily destiny.
Which leaves us with a big question to think about, doesn't it? As we get better and better at understanding all these biological and environmental drivers,
right?
How should we, as a society, adapt?
Adapt how?
Well, how do we create environments that support healthier choices? How do we develop more compassionate and truly effective treatments for obesity and eating disorders, especially knowing how deeply biological these conditions often are? How do we support people when the very systems designed to keep them alive sometimes seem to turn against them?
That's a lot to think about.